before we get into the video, I'd like to ask you to please go and subscribe and hit the bell icon so that way you know when a new video is uploaded. If you'd like to support my channel, please go and see my merchandise store that has all kinds of new stuff being put on there daily. I also have an Instagram as well as a few other social media sites if you'd like to check out to see what else I am doing. And let's get into the video. I've always been a fan of manga and anime, but I'm more over into the art of film aspect, rather than a series. Back in the 6th grade, however, I was a big fan of Naruto. It was a brand new school, and most of my friends went into the neighboring one, leaving me there with almost little to no friends. The first couple days of my math class, I spoke to no one until I saw this girl called M's binder. M had a decorated binder, a few of them pictures of her and her friends, but I noticed she had a few Naruto fan decorated here and there. I asked M if I could sit next to her, and she said sure. M actually is and still is a pretty cool person, but anyways, I asked M if she liked Naruto, and she said that she was just getting into it, and we talked about our favorite characters, which our favorite characters in chapters were, and you know, the normal fan conversations. Enter E. E is a girl who sat behind me, and as the seating order goes, E, me, and M. During a conversation M and I had, E just barges in and literally says out loud, "Oh my gosh, I love Naruto." M and I exchanged kind of a what the F glances and smiled at her out of pity. She was this girl who had very thin shoulder-length blonde hair, very skinny and dressed in rather matronically clothing. At this point, we didn't know who she was, so we decided to befriend her as she looked like the type to not have any. M asked E who her favorite character is, and she kind of stumbles a bit. I was quiet and this entire time wondering why she kind of mentally blanked on who her favorite character was as she expressed her love for Naruto. My binder only had one collage of it, and M made it, and it was Sasuke, Tenten, Neji, and Hinata on it. E kept going, and her eyes kept wandering around until she screamed and pointed at M's binder. "I like her, the pink-haired one." M nodded and I as well, and we returned to our work. As class progressed, E kept asking us what our schedules were and what lunch we had, and at this point we kinda got irked, and M was nice enough to invite her over to our lunch table. So at lunch that day, we all met up at 8, and we were all curious as to where E would be. A few minutes later, she comes running in and grabs M and I and gives us huge hugs and squeeze. She thanks us for inviting her over to our lunch, and then, which really is no big deal, I mean, we're just being decent people. One day in class, she whispers over to me, "Hey, is, the 4th Hokage really dead?" I turn over and nod, "Yeah, he's been dead for a while." She giggles and says, "Oh, sorry, I'm only on episode 154. What? I'm pretty sure if memory serves me correctly, they say the 4th Hokage died in the 1st episode. Here's where the weird things start happening though. E was convinced that she was Sakura from Naruto. She cut her hair short like how Sakura's was, consistently wore red, and was desperately wanting to dye her hair pink. She was convinced that the other people at our lunch table were also live incarnations of her favorite Naruto characters. English, VB. English. In our lunch table, there had been me, her, T, and O. T and O were completely normal and liked Naruto as well, but like me, they didn't force their love onto other people. E was convinced that M was Ino, O was Tamari, and I was, unfortunately, Sasuke. Things got a bit rocky when E asked T who her favorite character was, and T replied that, "Oh, it depends. Sometimes it's Tenten, but I also like Sakura." E was having none of that. T and I were much closer to each other than E and I were, and that was something E was really jealous of. One day, T and O stopped sitting with us at the lunch table, and as a friend, I got generally worried. When I asked M about this, E overheard, and she screamed about changing the subject. As school ended, I went over and asked T what was wrong, and she hurriedly passed me. I turned over, and E was standing right there looking a bit crazy. I called over O and asked what was going on, and she sighed, saying how the day before, when I sat down at the lunch table, E passed a note out to T saying that if she saw her talking to me again or sitting with us, she'd hurt her. And I took this as a red flag, but was really stupid to let this one slide. I reassured T that O and nothing was going to happen and that E wouldn't hurt a fly. A few hours later, I managed to convince T and O to sit back with us. E wasn't too pleased with that, but after I gave her a death glare, she kept quiet the whole time. This was when the weird things started happening. E constantly called me after school asking for homework help, but she would drift the topic and then continue talking about last week's episode of Naruto. I watched it online while she watched it on Cartoon Network every Saturday, so it was hard keeping a conversation with her since the episode timeline didn't match with each other. Whenever I wouldn't pick up the phone, she would leave long messages asking where I was, who I was with, and when I was coming home. In short, she had latched onto me at this point. Somehow she figured out my email address, home number, and this freaky thing when she knew my blood type. Are you kidding me? When I wouldn't answer my cell phone, she would go ahead and call my home phone hours on end to the point where my mom had to unplug it and say that if she called me one more time, she'd call the police on her. Asian mothers do drastic things, I swear. At this point, school was almost done and it had been a little past April and my love for Naruto had kind of dwindled. I don't blame this person. It would for me too. I was still a fan, but I didn't feel as if I needed to watch it consistently anymore. When I told this to M, T, and O, they were perfectly fine with it. T even said that she was getting a bit tired of it and wanted to watch something else. O as well. M, on the other hand, agreed wholeheartedly. E, however, burst into tears and cried to the point of her having to catch her breath because she thought that we were all no longer going to be friends, abandoning her and whatnot. M consoled her, saying that we were just not into Naruto anymore, and that didn't mean anything, but E was convinced that we were going to leave her. I rolled my eyes and left the table, and she screeches, "Sasuke-kun, don't leave like how you did our village." I turned around in shock and said back to her that I wasn't Sasuke, I'm not a 2D anime cartoon character, that I'm a real living, breathing person. After that, I left and sat with other people for the rest of the day. After every couple minutes or so, I'd look over to the table and she'd be in hysterics. Fast forward a couple weeks later. Things died down, and I stopped associating myself with E. I still talked with M, T, and O, but whenever E was around, we just stopped talking. In the library, I was talking to a friend about the new chapter out, and we were criticizing SACURA for her lack of bravery at this point. My friend was laughing and he said, "Oh my god, if this keeps up, SACURA is going to end up getting burned alive and killed." We hear a whimper and E storms past us, leaving us wondering what the heck's going on. A few hours later, I get a note from the counselor's office saying I immediately was needed over there, so off I went. I go into the office and I see E crying her eyes out, M, T, and O looking pissed as hell, and my friend with the same look. The counselor tells us that E said that I was spreading lies about her. The counselor said E left the room shortly after. So out of curiosity and to my defense, I asked what exactly she said because I stopped talking to E months prior. My counselor said E said you were saying how she was going to get burned alive and killed. Boom. My temper rose and I began laughing in pure anger. I tell her I was talking about a fictional character from a Japanese television show and how E is delusional. My counselor told me she would threaten me with suspension if I didn't tell the truth. I looked over to M, T, and O, and they all said the same thing in support of me. My friend as well spoke up about how much of a delusional person E is and how she's not mentally stable. After a while, the counselor believed us and apologized profusely, and out of her rash decisions and threatening us with an unfair suspension, she gave us coupons to some place we never heard of. Coupons. This was the alarm that set off, in which I ceased all contact with E and even refused to believe that she had gotten any better. Throughout middle school, E would lie to get attention. She always told us how she was going to move to some other state because of some vague reason, and she never actually did. She would lie about how she recently got a new cosplay, and we would ask her if she would show us, but she would always seem to ignore the question. In high school, I overheard one of my friends talking about how her so-called, if this was the same girl, I knew, and they would always say yes. They all talked about how much of a Japanophile she is, and how much of a weeaboo she is, and how much of a pathological liar she had turned into. After relaying them the story where I was sent to the counselor's office, they told me that she told them. E told them that I was some sort of 100-year-old vampire war king from Japan, and that if she ever talked to me ever again, I would suck her blood and leave her for dead. Kinda funny how she tries to make people believe that kind of stuff. I have the unfortunate case of having her in one of my classes, and lo and behold, it's my Japanese class. I took the class out of pure interest in the language, but like most weebs, she took it for the sake of expressing her desire for her favorite species. In my free time, I tutor kids in the class, and from what I've heard from my favorite tutors, E constantly talks about anime and won't even bother with the lesson at hand. She hasn't changed at all.